So welcome to LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. This is the live show I do every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Time, where I take clips mostly from the Sunday morning talking head pundit shows and that I think are interesting or relevant, or that I think my viewers should see, and I show the clips and add my commentary. And sometimes I take clips from a little outside, some outside sources. Usually I go through a bunch of different topics. But today I'm going to be doing an all George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin killing edition, all about the results to the reaction to the verdict last night. Now, let me get the clips here. I was processing clips right up to the last minute here, so you'll forgive me if you hear clicking. That's me adding in the clips. Now, I actually already made a video last night about my personal thoughts about the verdict, and it's called Why George Zimmerman Was Found Not Guilty for Killing Trayvon Martin, and it's about 2.5 minutes long, and you can watch that video. I think you can even see a link to it, or maybe that way, I'm not sure. But I want to do two things this morning. First, I want to show the most current clips about basically what next steps might be for those who are wondering, is there any other way to get justice here? Because I know a lot of my viewers and a lot of my friends on the left are interested in getting justice after this verdict. And even though if you go watch my video, you'll see I think the jury actually reached the right result in the criminal context, or at least this criminal case. There are some other options, and that's the first thing I wanted to show you is some of the ways that there might be next steps in the case. And let me add in a couple of those clips here now. So first I want to show you a clip of Al Sharpton from, I think it was from Meet the Press this morning, talking about how he always had a plan B. There was the trial of George Zimmerman was plan A, but he always had a plan B, as you can see in this clip.
And this is how the Huffington Post described it. A banner headline as the verdict came in: not guilty with an asterisk, but not innocent. That's how you view it. Where does it go next?
It goes to the Justice Department. Clearly, there are grounds for civil rights charges here. The mother and father of Trayvon Martin and I, with their lawyers, met with the U.S. Attorney in Florida the day I went down to organize the first national rally there. And we always said there would be a plan B, but there needed to be a plan A. There would never have been protests if there had been an arrest and if the police department there did what it was supposed to do.
You wanted Zimmerman to have a fair trial. That's what you were pushing for before charges were ultimately filed. Was this not a fair trial?
The trial happened. The verdict came in. That does not exhaust the legal options of this family and the bigger community issues of civil rights. We now have a position on the books in the state of Florida where an unarmed teenager who committed no crime can be killed, and the killer can say self-defense. That is dangerous.
So that's Al Sharpton's reaction there as to what the next steps are with his communication with the family of Trayvon Martin. And also, I wanted to play you this clip from Ben Jealous, head of the NAACP. They're actually asking the Justice Department to pursue criminal charges, and I'll show you that clip here.
You would ask them to file some sort of a federal lawsuit that his civil rights were violated, or what?
Federal criminal charges under the Matthew Shepard, James Byrd hate crime bill. The reality is what you're going to have to do there is show that race was a factor in his decision making, and there seems to be plenty of evidence that suggests that race may have been a factor. He called 911 a lot about young black men that he suspected of being dangerous, and he said these punks always get away. Having had that track record, those words have powerful meaning. And then you hear young men who lived in that community, boys who lived in that community, say that they felt targeted by him. And so, that's our hope. It should not be the case that somebody should be able to, to track, to taunt, and to kill a young man on the streets of our cities.
So they're actually asking for federal civil rights charges. And when I first heard that, generally, I thought, how can George Zimmerman be guilty of violating Trayvon Martin's civil rights? Because that usually requires a state actor. It's only the government that can violate your civil rights. Another citizen, another person can't. There's actually this Supreme Court case, I think it's Cruikshank from the 1860s, maybe. It's actually kind of a nasty case where there were this gang, this white militia gang, attacked this group of African American Republicans who were at this courthouse. I remember this case, and they wanted the white gang that attacked the black gang who were trying to exercise their, I think it was voting rights or something like that. They wanted them prosecuted for violating their civil rights, and the Supreme Court said no. The 14th Amendment and those amendments that were passed after the Civil War, they stopped the state from violating your civil rights, but the state governments, but not militia gangs of other individuals. So I was kind of interested that he said he wanted them prosecuted under this Matthew Shepard James Byrd hate crime law, and I looked that up over on the Department of Justice website. I'm going to put, you can see some, I don't know how well you can see that there, but that's what they talk about, the law that it makes it crime, willfully causing bodily injury or attempting to do so with a firearm, or other dangerous weapon when, 1, the crime was committed because of the actual perceived race, color, religion, national origin of any person. So I guess, or the crime was committed because of the actual perceived religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability of any person, and the crime affected interstate or foreign commerce. So it has to affect foreign commerce for that second part, but for the first part, if you can see all the way at the bottom, it says the government need prove no other jurisdictional element, because Section 249A1 was passed pursuant to Congress's 13th Amendment authority to eradicate badges and incidents of slavery. So that means it doesn't have to be state action. That's actually comes out of this Supreme Court case from the 1960s that upheld one of the Civil Rights Acts that says you can't discriminate in the sale of property. It invalidated these covenants, CC&Rs that real estate had, that said that people couldn't sell to African Americans or sometimes other ethnic groups, and the government, even though it didn't overrule that previous precedent I talked about, but the U.S. Supreme Court said that the government could stop individuals from discriminating in sale to African Americans, because that had to do with preventing the Congress's authority to prevent the badges and incidents of slavery. And so that's the same authority they're using for this Matthew Shepard James Byrd hate crimes law. And I don't know if that's actually ever been tested. It's kind of would be an interesting constitutional question as to whether Congress has the authority to prosecute an individual for violating or for this hate crime. But I mean, beyond whether the law itself is constitutional, there's the question of whether the government would actually be able to prove that kind of lawsuit. There was actually Dan Abrams, one of the chief legal correspondent for ABC, was on This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and he addressed that issue in here. I'll show you that clip here.
with regard to the federal investigation, yes, there will be a federal investigation. They will publicly discuss it, and there will not be charges filed under the Civil Rights Division will not file.
Because they can't win?
Because they can't win in this case. They won't win, and they know that. Now, there are two separate questions here that we're discussing, and I think it's important to distinguish them. One is a sort of broad societal right and wrong, and what is wrong with our society. And that is a fair question to ask, but that is a different question than talking about what happened in that courtroom. Because if you watch that trial every day, the way that I did, you do lose the sort of big picture, and you get very focused on the little picture.
And I think what he just said there is true, that even though there are these big racial questions, and I'll get to that, or questions about race involved in the Zimmerman trial and the killing of Trayvon Martin, that's not really what the jury was focused on. But I think what Dan Abrams said there is probably right, that there's the Justice Department will look at what Ben Jealous was saying there about whether there should be this hate crimes prosecution, but eventually I don't think they will file. I just think that if they couldn't get a guilty beyond a reasonable doubt verdict there in the state trial, it's even harder to prove the hate crime. The intent requirement is a lot harder. So I just find it difficult to believe that they're going to bring another case, another prosecution that can't be won. Of course, then there's another possibility, and the Trayvon Martin family attorney, Benjamin Crump, was on this week with George Stephanopoulos, and he talked about the possibility of a civil lawsuit in the answer to a question here.
Get killed as a result of senseless gun violence.
Decision yet on filing a civil lawsuit?
Well, they're going to certainly look at that as an option. They deeply want a sense of justice. They deeply don't want their son's death to be in vain. I mean, they are still in disbelief about his death, and now they're in disbelief about this verdict. It's just one of the things they have to deal with there in church this morning, praying, trying to turn to God, a higher authority, to make sense of it all.
And that was kind of like a non-answer to the question as to whether they'll file a civil lawsuit. And from what I understand, in Florida, under the Stand Your Ground law, George Zimmerman could have actually had a hearing before a judge as to whether he was immune from prosecution under the Stand Your Ground law. And now that he's been acquitted, he can go back before a judge and try to get immunity from civil lawsuits under the Stand Your Ground law. And I'm not sure what the standard of proof there is. And I mean, that's the thing. If you look at my video that I made about the verdict, I said that the prosecution didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that George Zimmerman didn't act in self-defense, which they had the burden of proof to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that didn't happen. But in a civil lawsuit, it would be like a 50-50 proposition, and I don't know exactly how. That would be a more difficult question as to what the evidence shows, where it's not beyond a reasonable doubt, it's just by a preponderance of the evidence. In that case, I think George Zimmerman might actually lose because of all the stuff that he did. And I wanted to add in another clip here about what would have happened. I want to move from what's going to happen next in the case now to some of the questions of race, and I'm going to actually have sort of a more detailed clips of Fox News versus MSNBC on race that I'll explain in a minute. But first I want to show another clip of Benjamin Crump, the Trayvon Martin family attorney, talking about what he thinks would have happened if George Zimmerman had been black, because Mark O'Mara, one of the defense attorneys for George Zimmerman, was asked that question in a press conference right after the verdict, and he said that George Zimmerman never would have been charged if he had been black, and they played that clip for the Trayvon Martin family attorney here, and I wanted to show you his reaction, which I wholeheartedly agree with in this clip.
I think that the things would have been different if George Zimmerman was black for this reason. He never would have been charged with a crime.
What's your reaction to that?
George, if you go to any courtroom in America on any given day, you will see the number of African American males being convicted on not much evidence at all. Not that it's right, but you will see that nobody in America worries that black men won't be convicted in court. That is not a big issue. Now, black victims worry about if they are victims to others outside of their community, whether they will be convicted. But I challenge anybody to go to courts all over America and just sit in the back and watch how the justice system plays out when it comes to black males.
So no.
And I couldn't agree with that more. I didn't just sit in the back in the courtroom. I was a public defender here in California. I was a public defender in Placer County, where there weren't a lot of African Americans, although I did have a couple African American clients, and there was some race issues. But before that, I was a public defender in St. Louis County, Missouri, where I'd say about 80% of my clients were African American, even though about 80% of my jury pool was white. And that made for like a terrible race dynamic. And what Benjamin Crump there said about go into any courtroom and see the kind of justice that African Americans get, or African American men especially, that could not be more true in my opinion. So I wanted to show you that clip. I have, let me see here, two more clips I want to show you from the Sunday morning shows this morning. One was one more from This Week with George Stephanopoulos. It's kind of an argument between Tavis, Smiley, and Dan Abrams and Paul Gigot, who's this right-wing guy, about whether basically the same issue on race. Anyway, I'll just play the clip for you here.
It appears to me, and I think many other persons in this country, that you can in fact stand your ground unless you are a black man. George Zimmerman was allowed to stand his ground. Trayvon Martin was not allowed to stand his ground.
There have been a lot of cases in Florida involving black-on-black crime where similar results have occurred, where no charges were filed. I'm not justifying it. I'm just saying that I do really want to focus on this case, and then I think we need to also have the discussion. But I don't know that when you connect the two, that it's necessarily fair in connection with this case. But
I'm sorry, that wasn't Paul Gigot. That was Dan Abrams there responding. And what he said there about there are cases where African Americans have been able to use the stand your ground law. I don't know what cases he's talking about. The one case I've heard about is this woman who got 20 years for firing a gun that didn't actually hit anyone, and her abusive husband was there, and she said that she was afraid of her abusive husband. Although I looked into that a little bit, and there are actually her two kids were also there, and she fired the gun in their direction, which is why the prosecutor justifies it. But still, the difference between how that African American woman who got 20 years and didn't hit anybody, and Trayvon Martin was also a kid. He was only 17, so and he was killed. He was actually hit by the bullet, and so I'm not sure what Dan Abrams was talking about there. So before I get to my Fox News versus MSNBC comparison on race in the case, I wanted to show you one more clip that's sort of also on the race question. It's kind of the Fox News Republican response to this whole thing. This is Republican Representative Steve King, and he answered the question, which was the big Fox News Sunday. If you watch Fox News Sunday this morning, the main question was, given the verdict, should charges have ever been filed against George Zimmerman? And I'm not so... even though I agree with the verdict, I'm not outraged that the charges were filed, because in this kind of case where there was the question of racism in the Sanford Police Department, and there was some history there, it's a question I'd rather have a jury decide than, government officials who, I'd rather have 12, a jury of 12, not 6, but just people off the street rather than politicians or bureaucrats decide it. So I'm not sorry, even though I accept the verdict and even think it was the correct verdict based on my reading of the evidence, and you can see that in my video I uploaded last night, I don't think it was wrong that charges were filed. But that was the big question on Fox News Sunday, and I wanted to show you this clip from Republican Congressman Steve King answering that question here.
Zimmerman ever have been prosecuted?
Well, from what I've seen of the evidence, I would say no. And my sympathy goes out also to the Martin family and the Zimmerman family for this ordeal that they've been through. But the evidence didn't support prosecution, and the Justice Department engaged in this, the President engaged in this, and turned it into a political issue that should have been handled exclusively with the law and order. So I regret that this all happened. I'm sorry that it was turned into a race issue by the media. And otherwise it would have been tried or not tried, depending on the laws and the language that was there. This is unfortunate.
So that's basically the Fox News Republican position here. That's kind of a generalization, but mostly what I've seen is that this never should have been filed, and it was politicization by the president. They keep showing this clip of President Obama back in March of last year, I think it was, saying if he had a son, Trayvon Martin would look like his son, or that his son would look like Trayvon Martin, and that he politicized it, and so I don't really agree with that, but I also wanted to show you this comparison of how Fox News and MSNBC treated the question of race in the George Zimmerman trial. The thing is, I was actually working on a video about this yesterday before the verdict came down, and I had to stop working on it and change to a new video about the verdict. But what I was working on is about midday my time yesterday, both Fox News and MSNBC discussed the exact same clip from prosecutor John Guy, his rebuttal argument, where he talked about race not being an issue in the case. And so I wanted to, I was going to make this video comparing the two. Since I didn't make the video, I just kind of wanted to give you a live comparison here. And so it started out yesterday while the jury was deliberating about whether he was going to be convicted or not. This is before the verdict. And both Fox News and MSNBC discussed at the exact same time this issue of race in the case that was referenced in the final prosecution rebuttal argument. And it began with Fox News, where the supposedly straight news anchor Greg Jarrett erroneously faulted the prosecutor John Guy for being the first to raise the issue of race, as you can see in this clip.
John Guy, who again delivered the rebuttal closing argument for the prosecution, said to the jury, "This is not about race," and then arguably he introduced race. Take a listen.
Ask yourselves, all things being equal, if the roles were reversed and it was 28-year-old George Zimmerman walking home in the rain with a hoodie on to protect himself from the rain, walking through that neighborhood, and a 17-year-old driving around in a car who called the police, who had hate in their heart, hate in their mouth, hate in their actions. And if it was Trayvon Martin who had shot and killed George Zimmerman, what would your verdict be? That's how you know it's not about race.
Are there racial connotations all over the prosecutor's remarks?
Right. Now, they definitely showed a long clip there of the prosecutor, John Guy, to prove their erroneous point that he was the first to raise the issue of race by saying the case was not about race, especially since if Fox News had just shown what the prosecutor said immediately before that clip, it would have totally contradicted the Fox News argument because this is what he said right before that here.
Let me just address one more thing with you before I close. And that was, it was brought up actually by the defense. It was brought up by the defense in their summation this morning, and it was brought up by the defense in the trial. Not by the state, but by the defense. Race. This case is not about race. It's about right and wrong. It's that simple.
So it wasn't the prosecutor that introduced race, and if they played the clip right before the clip they showed, you would know that it wasn't the prosecutor. It was the state that had previously introduced race. But of course, that didn't stop the analysis from the Fox News lawyers on that show, starting with Fox News legal analyst and contributor Mercedes Colwin, that you can see in this clip.
It's really unfortunate because this is not about race. There's a reason why Lady Justice is blindfolded. It's colorblind. Justice is blind. It has to be based on the facts. You start race mongering, that's what he's trying to do.
So that's basically the Fox News Republican position there, that if you bring race into this case, it's race mongering. And I have one more clip on that from it's the other Fox News contributor. That's why I wanted to show. It was like both of their commentators on Fox News agreed that race wasn't really a part of the case, and it was improper to bring it in. And here's the second clip on that, showing Fox News contributor and legal analyst Lise Wheel here.
React as well.
They haven't been under a rock. They know that the race is a potential issue here. They know that people are talking about this case. But to bring it into the courtroom where it has really no significant evidentiary relevance is not a wise.
If race wasn't introduced in this from the very inception after this killing occurred, we wouldn't even be here. Because that's one of the reasons. For 6 weeks, Zimmerman wasn't even charged. But obviously there was a lot of racial issues.
Right.
Exactly.
It's not in a courtroom.
It's
not applicable in a courtroom. Not relevant.
So I guess everybody on Fox News agrees that race was not relevant to this case. And I really don't agree with that. I definitely agree more with what they were saying on MSNBC at almost, as I said, it was exactly the same time. That's what I found so amazing, that they were both discussing the same clip from the rebuttal, John Guy saying race is not an issue in this case. And so I wanted to, let me just load up the clips here real quick, if you give me a second. As I've explained before, I can only load 3 clips at a time, so I'm going to get these last 3 clips in here. And the first one is a radio talk show host named Esther Arma, who I'm not really that familiar with, but she was one of the African American women who was on MSNBC discussing the same point at the same time in this clip.
Absolutely a trial about race, period. I think the manner in which the discussion has been had, the carefulness of people to not say that it's about race, the way in which Mr. Guy did his rebuttal. When he said the sentence, "This is not about race," it's because he knew that it was.
And I also want to show a second thing that this Esther, I cut out a little bit in the middle, but this is also, I thought was really interesting the way she concluded that in this clip.
The judge says, you can't say that he was racially profiled. And yet the last witness the defense brings, talks about being burglarized, these young black men, and the manner in which, the history of how black men have been treated in this country when it comes to attack and when it comes to profile is brought into the courtroom in that moment. And to negate that is to act as though race is somehow not present. Just because the word is not said does not mean it is not there.
So I think race definitely was brought into the case, and it was brought in by the state, and that was a good point on MSNBC. And then there was also a second commentator, this writer for The Blaze, Amy Holmes, and she also agreed. This is the thing I wanted to point out. Fox News had 2 people saying race was not part of the case, and then MSNBC had 2 women saying race was definitely part of the case. And Amy Holmes, writing for The Blaze, she's actually conservative. She could have been on Fox News. But anyway, here's her point in this final clip.
I agree with Esta that of course it's about race. George Zimmerman racially profiled Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was walking home. He was a black kid in a neighborhood, and George Zimmerman decided, because of those facts, that he must be a malefactor. He must be someone on his way to go rob a house.
So, yeah, that's definitely true. I mean, that's what I said in my video, that I think that Trayvon Martin was definitely racially profiled. He was killed for walking while black. And the point of my showing those clips from Fox News and MSNBC, first, I always like to show Fox News saying something that's totally false to make an argument. And what they said about John Guy's argument was totally false. And they did it with dishonest video editing by cutting out the part right before the clip they showed where he said it was the defense that actually brought up the issue of race, not the prosecution. But the other reason I wanted to show it is I think they should have had like some sort of female commentator exchange there, since they were talking all at the same time. It would have been nice if you would have had some sort of disagreement there, if one of the people on Fox News said race was part of the case and one said it wasn't, and then one of the women on MSNBC said it was part of the case and one wasn't. I mean, I happen to agree with the people on MSNBC there, but it would have been nice both for Fox News and MSNBC to have people who could advocate for both sides of that issue, instead of having like everybody agree on Fox News that it wasn't about race and everybody on MSNBC agree that it was. So anyway, those are the clips I wanted to show you tonight on the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin verdict, and I hope you found them interesting and informative like I did. I also like to take a few questions from the discussion section, since I'm doing this as a live event here, and if people have questions or comments about what I showed in the clips, I generally like the comments to be on topic here. So I see I've got like a whole bunch of questions and comments here. I'm actually over time here a little bit. I have about 5 or 10 minutes to see if we can get a little live discussion going here. Let's see some DR Nab 1983 asks, do you think that if the prosecution had focused only on a manslaughter charge, the reckless actions of Zimmerman and at least escalating a situation or resulting in the death of the child, they'd have won? Well, I mean, I think that they would have had a better chance. I mean, if you look on my Facebook page, facebook.com/LiberalViewer, you'll see I posted the jury instructions on Friday. And I posted a couple comments talking about how I thought that if the jury dispassionately followed the jury instructions, they would come to a not guilty verdict. But that from my experience as a criminal defense attorney, a lot of jurors actually make an emotional decision first, and then they read through the jury instructions explaining the law, trying to find a justification for their emotional decision, if that's at all possible. And it depends on the juror how far they'll stretch that. And I think if you the prosecution could have they had this theory that the manslaughter didn't start at the time of the shooting. It was a series of acts that George Zimmerman engaged in, starting from following Trayvon Martin. And there was kind of a jury instruction on how an act can be a series of events and not just like a moment in time. And maybe if they tried to do that, they might have gotten it over the top. But I mean, I still think the jury reached the right verdict, but if they focused on manslaughter, maybe. Let me see. Mr. Keynesian, do you think that allowing the prosecution to bring in audio experts in accordance with a 911 call would have changed the verdict? I don't think the experts would have made that much of a difference, and they would have had dueling experts anyway. And I mean, I think, especially because there were witnesses who said that Trayvon Martin was on top of George Zimmerman at some point, and even if there's a conflict in the witnesses, I mean, you're not trying to prove what happened when you're the defense. You're trying to raise a reasonable doubt, and Let's see, let me go through a couple more of these questions. NY One Love says, doesn't seem like murder 2 is outlandish. The guy was walking with a loaded gun. Well, I mean, for murder 2, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that George Zimmerman was acting with a depraved mind. And while I think that's possible, I think maybe he, based on the things he said on the 911 tapes and some other things, and his previous history, it was definitely possible that he was out stalking Trayvon Martin because he was sick and tired of, these effing assholes or whatever. And I mean, that was a possibility, but proving it beyond a reasonable doubt is a lot different than it being a possibility. And I mean, I think that kind of explains the verdict. Let me see. Representative Press says, Al Sharpton is lying. The crime is punching and slamming someone's head on the ground. I'm sorry if people can't see that. Sharpton is lying. You can't dispute if those actions happen, but don't lie. I'm not sure Trayvon Martin could have been convicted of a crime, if you really follow the law, because Trayvon Martin also, as the prosecution said, he also had a right to self-defense, but Trayvon Martin's actions weren't on trial here. It was George Zimmerman, and George Zimmerman had the advantage that that the burden of proof was on the prosecution. The prosecution had to prove that he didn't act in self-defense. But if the prosecution had to prove that Trayvon Martin didn't act in self-defense, especially with all the stuff about George Zimmerman stalking him, and we don't really know what happened, that's kind of one of the other things I said in my video, is the sad irony of all this is we don't really have Trayvon Martin's side of the story because he's dead. And that's the tragedy here, that he may not be getting justice because there's no one to tell his side of the story because he was killed. But that's the way the criminal justice system is supposed to work. It doesn't, like Benjamin Crump was saying there, it often doesn't work that way for black men. But that doesn't mean that we should say it shouldn't work that way for George Zimmerman to get back at them. I also agreed with the verdict in the O.J. Simpson trial because I thought that the defense team raised a reasonable doubt there, and I don't know, I hope everybody, I hope there are more people who are consistent there, that they look at those two, that people who are unhappy with this verdict were also unhappy with that one, and people who are satisfied with this verdict were also satisfied with that one. But somehow I think that there's a lot of disconnect between those two verdicts. Let me see, I have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. Let's see. Let me just scroll. I'm just sorry. I know I'm missing a bunch of them. I'm just trying to see if there's a couple more here. Rahab 111222 says, so the cops and jury were wrong. Zimmerman punched himself in the face, of course. Well, I saw someone raise the question whether George Zimmerman, after the fact, did increase his injuries, like pinch himself in the nose to get it to bleed more and stuff. And like I said, that maybe that's possible. I don't rule that out. But that wasn't raising that as a possibility doesn't convict George Zimmerman. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he didn't act in self-defense. So let me see. I guess I've gone through a bunch of comments here, and I see you're kind of arguing with each other in the comment section. So I'm going to finish up the show here for the day, and I hope, like I said, if you want to see my edited, produced video without me, all my ums and ahs and pausing and stuff, giving you like a quick 2.5 minute version of why I think that the jury reached the right verdict, though there are other problems. You can watch my video, why George Zimmerman was found not guilty for killing Trayvon Martin, and if you're watching this as a recorded video, I think I should be able to put a link there for you. Thank you all for joining me. I had quite a few viewers today. I know it's a big news day. I'm hoping to make another video. I may make a video about this whole issue of the hate crimes and the constitutionality of the hate crimes law, and whether there can be federal charges. I'm not sure. That may or may not be my next video, but thank you all for joining me on Liberal Viewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup, the George Zimmerman Verdict Edition, and I hope you have a good rest of your weekend, and I guess I'll see you around the internets.